Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. Strangle your demons and let's go.
Y'all need Jesus!
The first kick I took was when I hit the ground. End up like a dog that's been beat too much till you spend half your life just covering up now. Born in the USA, I was born in the USA. Born in the USA, born in the USA now. How's that for an opening, man? You fired up yet? Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. You already know who I am. I'm your host, Eric Hellberg. And why are we making this episode? Because tonight is the night. It is debate night. This is the first salvo launched into taking back this country. And you know Joe Biden's going to call President Trump a convicted felon. That's why they had to put that label on him. Of course, President Trump could just simply, adeptly dodge that and says, hey, like father, like son. And I'm not talking about my son, but yours. And you just haven't been convicted yet, Joe. How's that for a good start? Or how about President Trump then goes into the young lady who was just brutally raped and killed in Houston, close to me, where I am at now, and the other one in Central Park in New York, both by Venezuelan gang leader migrants. I cannot remember. They are called the Treinta. I'd have to look it up. But did you know when President Biden entered into office, the Venezuelan president, he actually made a calculated business decision, kind of like Lloyd Austin over at Raytheon. He said, they will let anyone into America. So let's get rid of the dredges of our society. And the Venezuelan president opened up the door to his prisons because they're pretty lenient down there in the South American and the Central American countries, insofar as that if you typically just stay to yourself, they let you be. But you have to really be a scourge on society, causing harm for them to take action. They don't have a police state like ours. Moreover, they don't make money by putting people in prison like we do, all the for-profit prison corporations. Why we need to lock everyone up when they get 3 joints and 1 little bag of these pills and all that kind of good stuff. So obviously they reserve their status of incarceration, their governmental housing, right, for the worst of the worst. And that was all the people who were members of this Venezuelan gang. Well, they're all here in America now. And they are killing and chopping and maiming and raping more than ever before. Thank you, Joe Biden. In fact, the guy was so, what would we call him? So brazen. The guy in Central Park actually laughed about it in court because he videotaped the whole thing. Rape and murder. Wonderful people. Thank you, Papa Joe. And then I would go on, if I was President Trump, and just talk about what we mentioned last episode, the disappearance of children. How Joe, even though as a devout Catholic, he has a special propensity for killing children. How he loves to create policies that allow children to go missing so they can then be exploited. I think that is a good place to begin. And then finally, since you mentioned his son Hunter, who he created a narcissistic boy in, maybe President Trump should mention his daughter, Ashley. And we now know that everything she wrote in her diary was true. And while Joe was sniffing on her girlfriends, touching her girlfriends. He particularly enjoyed showering with his daughter. I think that may quiet Joe down, and maybe that'll kind of throw him off. No matter what kind of elevated shoes they put in there, stability shoes they put him in, an extra layer of Depends, no matter how much methamphetamine they inoculate him with to make him function on stage. Once Joe gets thrown off, he is done. And we need him done. Oh yeah, while everyone is preparing for the debate, Vladimir Putin has now been to Vietnam, has signed a security and trade pact with them as well. Oh yeah, all this is going on. And did you know that the Chinese Ministry of Defense and their leader, Wu Quan, a very serious looking man, by the way, a very competent looking man, by the way. Why is it that their people look so much more professional and not disheveled like ours? Is it because their intent is pure? They're not clouded in their judgment. They know exactly what they are doing and have actually come up with well thought out strategy by which to implement. Well, here's what he just recently said. He says the Chinese army is ready to defend justice in the world together with the Russian army. PLA soldiers are willing to defend international justice and impartiality together with their Russian counterparts and make every effort to safeguard international and regional security. Men, we are so screwed. We are so screwed. We just don't know it yet. I have a family member, and he knows someone. These are people with, we'll say, naval contacts, and one, in fact, still works under a DoD contract. Did you know that they have run the simulations? They have run everything imaginable. And I'm also friends with someone who retired from the Navy, but he worked in naval intelligence. He is an aerospace engineer, very calculating, very methodical, but he lives in China right now. And he says there is absolutely no way, I'm not even going to use the word assertion of aggression and or dominance. We cannot even compete with the Chinese military at this point. And how would we do it? We're going to utilize resources, stage and or go to them. They can come to us as easy as we can go to them, except in greater numbers and with more advanced technology. You just heard Wu Quan say that he and Russia are going to be working together. And you're going to be like, well, the epitome of technology must be the space program. Do you know how many more satellites in space that Russia has than us? Did you know Russia has been working on how to reprogram the existing hardware and software in our own satellites? Did you know that when it comes to space launches, rocket boosters, the epitome of technology, since the inception of our program in NASA, we have had 1,400 and change launches. Did you know that Russia has had over 3,000? And that the space station was in place well before there was ever even collaboration with us, the Americans, done at Russian hands? They had already figured out how to keep cosmonauts in space for long durations. Do you realize any craft that they send up there is more powerful, can carry a bigger payload, and is manufactured with better materials than ours? That's why we bring steel in from Russia. And did you know when we're in really tight spots and we need to work on critical applications, we get their titanium too? Did you know at the heart of our defense establishment, they know this as well? That's why they're rattling their sabers and creating proxy wars in conjunction with other countries. because they know that they cannot win a set piece and or a static and or an asymmetrical war against people that wrote the book on that type of warfare. We are being lied to. You want proof? All right. What happened to Second ID in Korea, Camp Casey? What happened to Camp Humphreys? I was at Second ID. We were supposed to be the stumbling block when the hordes came across from Pyongyang. Oh, yeah. First of the 503rd Light Infantry Air Assault Battalion. That place has been closed. Camp Humphreys, our other light fighters guarding the border. We were supposed to be the speed bumps against the North Korean invasion. First of the 506th Light Infantry Air Assault Battalion. Gone. Who is going to protect Uijeonbu by the 506th? Who is going to protect where we were, the closest to the DMZ, Tongdushan, from the hordes in North Korea? We already know that we cannot. They've all been closed. Further troop reductions. Osan Air Base is a shell of its former self. You want further proof? You haven't heard a word about it. Look at what's going on in Okinawa, the Japanese island south of the mainland island of Japan. Our great U.S. Marines, there used to be around 25 to 30,000 of them there. They may be down to about 15,000 right now. They're going to get them down to 8 or 10,000. Everyone has been shipped out to parts unknown, probably Guam, probably some other areas, and that reduction in force will continue. We are capitulating because we know if we put our nose up the wrong ass, that it will be blazing glory, and those people will not stand a chance in those isolated areas. They're as good as dead. So we have removed them. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The good old bull moose. We know we had problems with the Enterprise, but the bull moose has moved into theater, Teddy Roosevelt, because we know that the IDF is about to launch full scale against Hezbollah. I don't know what that means, but we know that Hezbollah is going to move into northern Israel, and they're going to immediately work to destroy their airfields. Well, we need to have a place for Israeli fighters and other planes to land, and that will be the Teddy Roosevelt's job. The world is ablaze, and Joe Biden wants to focus on the fact that President Trump is a convicted felon. If I were President Trump, I would also hang that debacle and death of COVID around Joe Biden's neck. Did you know the Prime Minister of Japan, and this is just since our last episode, and I mentioned it again, has come out and issued a public apology to his nation and his people? He said they did the best they could with the information that they had, but that there was enormous pressure. And he was repentant and apologized. And when we wrong someone, men, that's our job. We can't control what the acceptance is going to be from the other party, but there is a catharsis within us. And then we are urged to do better, to do different. That is shame. And shame is very big in Japanese culture. Could you imagine if the American culture had it? Instead, we operate with no shame. It's anything goes. But yep, Japan has now apologized to its own people. Did you know they also did a study in conjunction with South Korea, and they have now found that the COVID jab given, and I told you they tried to decimate the elderly with it. If you were 65 and older and you received 2 shots, that you have MCD, mild cognitive decline, typically within 3 months, and or the onset of dementia is now 20% higher. And they have also found that the youth 14 and under who received the jab are now experiencing heart attacks, stroke. And that goes to what we detailed early on in the Comfortable in Chaos podcast when we talked about all the myocarditis, all the thromboses, the clots as your body tries to rid itself of these spike proteins. It has run amok. I would hang that around Joe Biden's neck. In fact, in New Zealand, they had mandated the vaccine. There were no options, nothing. And it would have been that way here in America had we not fought back. But according to an interview with Dr. Paul Osterhuis and Liz Gunn, the leader of the New Zealand Loyal Party, they have now come out and said despite mandating it by law, under the threat of punishment by law, 11,000 of New Zealand's top officials and elites, the very richest of the richest, received an exemption from the law for the COVID vaccine. What was it that they knew that we didn't know? And finally, if I was President Trump, I would hang this American war in Ukraine around his neck, Joe Biden's neck. I would hang this horrific war going on in Israel with Gaza around Joe Biden's neck and his hemming and hawing for anything that is just. You know what else I would do? I would tell Joe Biden that I cannot believe that the 2,000 Mules documentary has been out for probably a year and a half now, showing that thousands of ballots were illegally trafficked in swing states. We have not had one criminal indictment in any of those states to any of those people. Not one. But Trump has been indicted 4 times for daring to fight the fraud on our behalf. I would hang it around Joe Biden's neck that despite the fact even these asinine countries around the world, many of which I talk about on this show, the one thing they do right is they require voter ID in their electoral process. But yet, the United States of America, the bastion of freedom around the world, does not. They do not want free and fair elections in this country. Our elections are a joke. So let's applaud President Trump in this debate and let's get him in. So until next time on the Comfortable in Chaos podcast, I bid you bon voyage, my burgeoning flock.
Until next time, like and subscribe to the Comfortable in Chaos